started. Super. So I would now like to invite Ranjan to kind of share some of the trends that we see play out in the retail industry. It's a very interesting space. So I'm really looking forward, Ranjan, to your take on the trends in the industry.
Thank you, Mukesh. Let me share my screen. Is my screen visible, Mukesh?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so let me introduce myself first. So I am Ranjan Sharma. I am the CIO for Bestseller India. I head a couple of other functions as well, apart from technology, which is supply chain. And I also run the e-commerce business for Bestseller India, all our .in businesses. Bestseller is a Danish company which was incorporated way back in 1975 we've been in India for 11 plus years. We have brands like Jack and Jones, Veramoda. Only we have 250 plus of our own stores, almost about 35 odd franchisee stores, 1500 plus shop-in-shop stores with the large departmental stores in India, and across e-commerce platforms with our own e-commerce as well as with the likes of Myntra, Amazon, Ajio, and many more. So that's where we are. I just wanted to give a brief take on what I think, though it's the topic is really massive, and we can spend the entire day discussing about it. But I just wanted to, because with the paucity of time, I said let me give my perspective, a very small one, and very brief, a very high level. So that's where this is what I feel things are moving, because it is not about that tech and businesses are running independent. They have the line is blurring between technology and businesses, because it is becoming too much, at least in retail, there's a huge interdependency for running all the business processes that we have, for running whatever new innovations that we want to do in the businesses. They all have to run from technology. You can't do without the technology, because of so many people who are getting involved into things. There are so many places which are getting involved into it. Information coming from disparate systems from so many more areas. Hence, it all has to come together. It cannot be sitting in isolation, and it cannot be running independent. So the big piece is about merging the technology and the business together. The biggest competition is no more about so I'll give you a perspective from my perspective. We run fashion business. We are in a fast fashion business, and there's not though we will keep innovating, we will keep doing newer things, we'll keep coming up with newer trends, but then there is beyond the point we might not just be able to do more with it, because someone or the other will catch up. Our life cycle, being a global organization, our life cycle could be pretty long in terms of developing a new product and bringing it to a store or the retail front. There could be small and with large factories where the supply chain lead time could be longer. There could be somebody who could just pick up the trend and convert that entire product into maybe about a few weeks and get it on the shop floor. So the competition might not just be, and at a much lower price. So the competition cannot be only on the product. The competition is much more beyond the product itself. So it is in terms of the experience, in terms of the product, and the business models that you are running. And to run those business models, you need to have architecture. You need to architect your technology systems in a way which is highly scalable, robust, and you can do things much faster. And at the same time, you should be able to democratize technology, which is about giving the power of the technology into the hands of the business user, rather than getting the technology team to be able to do everything by themselves. So I think that's more or less is my take. Let me go back to the next piece, which is about which is a huge subject in itself, the digital twin, which I keep talking about. What do I mean by digital twin? And what does digital twin brings to us? It's slightly similar to what Industry 4.0 would be like. It is about bringing in a transparency, digitizing your end-to-end processes across the supply chain, across the value chain, so that you are able to take decisions much more faster. You have enough visibility so that you are able to react in times of challenges in times of things like pandemic that hit us last year. Uh, who would have thought, and how the entire supply chain got disrupted? The factories got disrupted. We were already left with a lot of merchandise which was available with us because the pandemic hit in the end of March. The season had already had already embarked. We already had a lot of merchandise available with us. Shops were closed. Where do you sell it? What do you do with the orders that you have already placed with the factories that's there? And so on and so forth. You keep going backwards. What do those factories do with the mills that are manufacturing those fabrics, the trim guys, and that entire value chain? How does and each of them are connected, each of them have an interdependency. How do each of them keep working with each other and be able to shape up and change things? Imagine we lost our entire spring season last year, and the stores were only started opening sometimes in about July, August, uh, and that too in a very, very small way. What do you do with the fabric which is already lying with you? What do you do with the trims, or what do you do with the clothes that are already lying with you, ready with you? How do you make use of it? Maybe it's a good idea to move it to some other country or some other part where the same fashion or the same trend could be saleable, or use the same fabric or the same trims to manufacture some other designs, create some other designs which could be useful in autumn winter. That's where that whole visibility, that whole uh, space of creating a transparency across the value chain, because many a times these are all sitting in silos. uh, the mill manufacturer has his own systems, he has his own details, he has his own visibility. uh, the retailer has his own visibility, the manufacturer has his own visibility. None of them are talking to each other. They're all working in silos, they're all working independently. It has to come together, all of this has to come together, and only then will we be able to bring in the benefits of the entire supply chain in terms of being able to reroute, take decisions, leverage the benefits that we have around whatever raw material or merchandise, whatever is available at different stages, at different value chain, and be able to make use of them. The second big piece, which I keep calling the headless commerce. I don't like calling it omni channel, because omni channel uh, has been a hugely discussed topic, but then I would rather call it headless commerce, because that's the game. It's not about just having one monolithic system and being able to trying to deliver everything, because that's not the way how it is. Nobody will be able to deliver everything and anything by themselves. So it is about bringing in the right components to be able to service different pieces. And commerce is everywhere now. It's today's world. Today's the Gen Z, they are no more interested in going and spending 2 hours, 3 hours at the storefront. What do you do with them? But then you already have a huge infrastructure which is available. It's not that the physical stores are going to die down. It's not that the physical stores are going to go away somewhere. They are there. They're pretty much the experience center, and there are still going to be a lot of people who will still be wanting to go and experience that and buy from there. But then, is it that all the customer base is going to move towards e-commerce? No. It's going to become a combination of all of this. The combination of people going and shopping from e-commerce, picking up from the stores, people shopping on e-commerce, picking up from the valet or curbside pickup, people people making their going through the shopping journey onto the WhatsApp and the likes of the other messengers like Facebook Messenger and other places, and are able to interact and engage with the stores. Because the store still is the experience center, the store is the nerve center. You still need, at least in fashion, you still need a lot of help. The customer still needs a lot of help, a lot of uh, understanding, because he still needs to understand what product is going to go well with what is the fabric. They are asking questions like, where has it been manufactured? What kind of factory setup is that where it is being manufactured? What are the kind of fabrics it is? What how is it going to go with other products? The styling tips, the fashion element, the trend element, all of that needs to be understood. No matter how much technology we bring in, we still might need that. At least in today's world, we still might need that human intelligence. We still might need that human touch, and that's where the store becomes much more relevant even today in today's world. And then bringing all of this together, uh, in terms of social commerce, in terms of conversational commerce, in terms of e-commerce, uh, and enabling all the processes. And in fact, the store is also becoming a commerce as well, because that's the next trend, that's the next wave, where things are moving, where stores are no more called a store alone, it is called another commerce hub, because it is not sitting in a silo, it is not independent, it is working in that entire ecosystem, and it is reacting and also is able to service things which could be coming from different channels. So it is no more about each of them being independent channels, they're all coming together, converging together to be able to deliver that experience. And that's where the whole game changes, from a consumer perspective, from a retailer's perspective, uh, because then consumer is always asking for newer things, newer experiences. They are asking for experiences which are available at the storefront, which could be in terms of trial, which could be in terms of engagement, which could be in terms of help around styling, in terms of what combinations you want to wear, what goes well with what, how do you create a complete wardrobe, how do you create a complete look. All of that, they might need those intelligence, and they might need those inputs at various stages in their commerce journeys at different places. We've got to bring all of that together and make it an experience for the customer, where he's able to uh, he's able to get that service. One, the customer is able to get that the experience in terms of being able to engage with the brand, understand the brand, understand the products, and be able to shop. It's not just about shopping, because shopping as a behavior is no more something which is event based now. With the dispensable income that people have, uh, shopping fashion is about more instinctive than anything else. It is about consumers trying to buy anything at any point of time. Uh, Today, shopping happens. It's no more about shopping being done only for Diwali or Eid or Holi. It is about, I want to go to a party and I want to buy a dress for it. I want to go for a concert and I want to buy a dress for it. And it could be different things. I want to go for a meeting and I want to buy a dress for it. And what that is leading to is a last minute purchase decision, where the deliveries and the whole of the fulfillment strategy being that needs to be set around it, to be able to deliver within that short duration, within the timelines that the customer is willing to, or in the timeline that the customer wants. Maybe in a few hours, maybe a couple of hours, 4 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours delivery. That's what the customer is expecting. And hence the whole of the technology has to come together in terms of not just about the shopping behavior, not just the discovery behavior, but also the whole of the fulfillment, and each of these stores uh, becoming a mini fulfillment center in themselves, because they are no more just about attending to the customers and selling them, but also becoming a mini fulfillment center in terms of shipping out merchandise, packing, picking, packing, and shipping out merchandise for a customer's order, uh, and be able to service the customer in a few hours. What this is leading to, because this is leading to a lot of data being generated across everywhere, and there is a lot of insight which is to be derived out of that data. People are leaving a lot of digital footprint across this entire value chain, and that data is definitely the biggest piece that we are wanting to understand, because that gives you the behavior of the consumer, the sentiments of the consumer, uh, and you are able to then customize your products, your services basis that. That's where data is becoming much more important. Now, the amount of data that is being generated, it is becoming humanly impossible to make sense out of it. And that's where, again, a lot of new age technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing, they are coming into big time play, where it is enabling to be able to start making sense out of that data at different stages, in terms of whether it is predictive analytics, whether it is about forecasting, whether it is about ensuring what merchandise needs to be placed in which store at what point of time, uh, or what do you make at what point of time, what kind of a color, what kind of a fit, what kind of fabric uh, is consumer going to demand in which part of the country at what point of time. And basis that, you align the whole of your design process, align whole of your merchandising process, align your entire fulfillment process to be able to deliver to that. Last but not the least, if you have to deliver all of this, you need to have a lot of flexibility in your core infrastructure, because the core infrastructure has to be very, very quick to be able to deliver, because the decision making, it's no more that now we have projects for months. Projects cycles have actually got reduced, and they are now in weeks. I remember 10 years, 12 years back, we used to have 3 months lead time for getting a server, and another 3 to 4 weeks of lead time to deploy it and make it available. You don't have that leeway because the project cycle itself could be a few weeks. How do you wait for it? How do you get that entire infrastructure available with all the network availabilities, with all the security features available, with whatever components that you need in terms of scalability? Uh, you've got to get it on time. You've got to get it very, very quickly. You don't have the leeway to be able to wait for weeks and months. That's where the cloud adoption is becoming the next is been there, and people have adopted it big time. But I think it's what is enabling, it is what is fueling the innovation, because now you're no more worried about the infrastructure. You're not worried about the storage. You're not worried about having your storage sized right on day one, because then you might not have the opportunity to be able to scale at a later date. Today you might just start small and keep scaling as you keep growing, and those decisions can be taken in hours and minutes, and it can be, the service could be delivered in a few hours as well. So that's where the whole scheme of things has changed, because all of these pieces have to come together to be able to deliver with the innovative technologies in terms of automation, in terms of being able to do a lot of predictive things, being able to do uh, a lot of newer aspects or newer thoughts in terms of, because the ideas are coming every day. How do you bring that into action? How do you deliver that as one solution, and today's new businesses are being enabled by technology. So it is no more that you would put a product into the shop floor and it would sell. You need technology to be able to make the whole of the catalog to be ready, the whole of the to be ready. AI is available in shooting, because one of the things that we discovered last year was during the pandemic, we did not have the models available. What do? We created AI models to do the shoot itself. We have been using for almost about a year now all AI models across all our websites, and we've been able to bring that whole cycle of shoot from 10 days to 2 days, from shoot to production. And that's where the whole game changes. That's where the whole idea of being able to make entire process digital changes, because that will give us the power to be able to do things much more faster, much more better, and it also gives us flexibility to be able to maneuver and do things the way we want, the way how the business wants, and stay a step ahead. And that this is the core fabric, this is the core layer on which needs to be built to be able to keep innovating and be able to deliver new business models. I think that's all that I had to say. But any questions anyone would have, I would be more than happy to answer. Mukesh will be able to highlight those questions, and then I would be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Ranjan. I think very, very valid and pertinent points that you have raised from a trends perspective. I think one of the things that I really liked about what you shared was the fact that when you talk about headless commerce, you spoke about the picture also. It shows as if the consumer is at the center and everything else is kind of serving that consumer. So that human-led design of processes and commerce is probably gaining a lot of traction everywhere in the world. So thank you for sharing that. At any point in time, you have any questions from what Ranjan shared, please do drop your questions on the chat and we'll take it up from there. I would now like to invite Madhav Nishtala from SAP, to kind of share his perspectives on how SAP can actually accelerate your digital transformation journey. Madhav?
Thank you, Mukesh. I hope you can see my
Yeah,
screen and hear me.
yes.
Thank you. So, in terms by way of introduction, I focus on retail as a sector for SAP India. I'm like, so what I'm going to talk about in possibly next 15-20 minutes is take on from where Ranjan spoke about and spoke about trends. He fundamentally and see, give you a view of what is the SAP point of view around that. Yes, what has happened in the last year and a half was unprecedented. A lot of things had changed, and Ranjan has spoken about the trends, so I will not spend too much time in this. But what what has also happened, which is also reflective in what Ranjan was speaking, is the conversations and the imperatives which retail companies like yours are talking about, and the conversations they're having with us from a tech perspective. The management talks today about growth and store growth, and but not in the terms of we've seen pre-pandemic. People now talking about growing stores. Yes, expansion plans are on, but from a perspective of profitable growth, and they're talking about, can I do more in my existing stores? Conversations around that, which essentially talk about getting more and looking at growth from a very measured fashion. The function heads talk about and have gone back to looking closely at their metrics. What is my conversion rate? How much is my revenue? How do I now look at product revenue? Where can I get more efficiencies in my retail operations? In fact, one of the questions that people ask very commonly in all tech conversations at retail companies is, how can I do more? How can I do more from my existing footprint? How can I bring in uh, a greater efficiency in what we are doing? Which is then, if you look at that from the SAP perspective, yes, for a long time we've been looking at processes from an end-to-end coverage. You could call that best practices, which is essentially ensuring we cover the end-to-end value chain from a plant to buy to move to sell. When you put that in perspective of what is happening today, uh, the questions were asked were in terms of, how can I bring in more into this best practices? Can I bring in models of where I understand what is going on in a little more detail? A simple fact, like for example, a demand. Now, in times earlier when you knew your sales and you knew what to expect, so your forecast was in that sense, uh, it was not simple, but it was still predictable. If you, for a forecast, if you put in parameters which are external today, is the mall open? Is that area open? Are customers coming in? Have my you bring in aspects of how do you factors into the demand? How do you bring in a demand forecast which is real, which is more accurate and more today? That from is in itself one of the aspects where we were talking about doing more with each of the functions, doing more with the demand. For us in this example, how do we bring in a demand forecast across with across all your sales points? I'm deliberately not using the word channels because, like Ranjan said, channels really don't exist anymore. At each of these direct to consumer points and purchase points, how do you bring in demand? How do we look at all of that? For example, Ranjan spoke about customers asking you questions in terms of how what has child labor been used, how such, which is essentially an aspect of what is going into the product and how are we looking. So these are questions which are now in the customer's mind, and which in a sense are questions that as tech providers, as the ERP backbone for most retail, these are questions that we were also seized with, and how can we support and bring these processes in. So in terms of to be able to enhance and augment the current processes, bring in these newer dimensions was what we called the next practices. And then there were now demands which in terms of how do we questions on bringing in innovations, for example, in the storefront. There were uh, questions on use of newer technologies. Ranjan spoke about AI, ML. Uh, how do we bring that into the backbone? Having innovations is one thing. Having innovations from a perspective of it feeding back and being to the processes and making it efficient is one thing. So innovation at what cost and at what feasibility and at what levels of integration does it bring back? If you have, so how if a customer does a trial in a store, and how does that feedback, then feedback, bring it back, and how do we take it back all the way up to the merchandise? How do we bring to the planner, and how do we ensure that goes through the phase, which is in a sense the vertical edge as it's called. But how do we bring all of that into the same ERP backbone, which was essentially what the SAP's intelligent enterprise framework was. For starters, it began with how do we bring in business intelligence. The first and the hygiene factor was to be able to bring data back to the business users, to the merchandising and to the ops in terms of what is happening, and availability and access to data. Well, that was one aspect of it. How do we then enhance it with across functions? Because if we provide the data both to the supply chain, to the merchandising, and to the stores at the same point at that point in time, which is one aspect of what business intelligence was all about. And then we brought in the aspects of how we can look at process from a process discovery perspective. Maybe are there bottlenecks in the processes? Is my GR taking too long because of a certain block or a certain process loop at the time of receiving? Simple aspects like that, or look at various aspects of are we getting various emails, and how does that, is there a specific bottleneck that I need to solve? Is there aspects of automation which are repetitive tasks which consume time and effort? Can I automate that, or bring in aspects of innovation, which is bringing in a newer technology practice, which is essentially the business process. All of these are now embedded back and put back in what we call the intelligence suite. It is intelligent because of all these aspects which come in, which is the core of which is the S/4HANA retail. So when with an enhanced backbone, the next aspect was to look at how do we extend the periphery, which is the industry cloud solutions. An industry cloud is essentially a set of SAP and partner apps which are specialized for retail, which allow you to extend the enterprise. Which these are aspects which can give you the aspects by which even which are referred to by Ranjan as well, in terms of to be able to do AI in product shoots, to be able to do AR VR in a store, to be able to simply do a in-store when a customer is at a store to do is to pick up his online shopping. Is there something I can do with him to give him accessories? Can I do an upsell? These are all industry cloud solutions. There are ready solutions which are deployed by SAP. There are solutions which have been developed and endorsed by SAP only on what we call the SAP store. These are today we have about 100 plus applications that are available for retailers. And of course, if there are ideas and any of the retailers or colleagues on the call, if there are ideas you want us to work jointly with, we are open to that. Now that brought the aspect of how we were bringing in the suite, bringing in newer technologies, and to be able to extend the industry cloud. All of this work on, I think, Mr. Ravi Kumar, if you don't mind, I'll take a question a little later. All of this is based on what we call the business technology platform. It looks at bringing in the technology components from which is in terms of the machine learning or the artificial intelligence, and also looks at from an integration perspective, which is cloud to cloud or cloud to on-prem, which is essentially the tech stack, but all of that is powered by the business technology. And the last aspect is about cloud and how we can today we are available on cloud, both from an SAP perspective, which is what we call the SAP data center, or we work with all of the major hyperscalers, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, and even Alibaba. So, which is the entire SAP Intelligent Enterprise suite. And what the Intelligent Enterprise brings is an ability to modernize the ERP backbone, to be able to bring with it an ability to provide the newer models. Ranjan spoke about some, but all of those innovations, if we have to bring it back, the SAP structure or the SAP framework is the SAP Intelligent Enterprise. Now, all this being very fine, the next question which is in your mind essentially is this a long time to value product? Is this going to take me a lot of time? Me as a retailer, do I have to put all of these stacks together? Obviously, there are solutions. There is a partner solution which comes in. Do I have to put that together? Will it affect my business? Is there going to be a downtime? Is the SLA that I promised to my business users going to be affected? Do I have to talk to 15 different people? How does the path look like? Is this, what do I do first? Do I do a tech migration? Do I do a re-implementation? How does that work? Are people hard to get? And finally, fundamental question, basic question is it too expensive? Now, all of these are real, valid concerns, very relevant points. And therefore, what we at SAP did was brought all of these together in what we call the RISE with SAP. What does RISE with SAP essentially mean? It has two aspects to this. One, it enables value creation. It brings in all what we've talked about from the S4 HANA retail merchandising and puts that in a framework from a IT perspective to be able to mitigate this, to ensure that it is not a 6-month project, it is not an elephant in the room, and also to be able to bring that and manage it from a TCO perspective. In fact, it also gives you an ability to manage the entire piece as a service. Right? So what does that mean? What it means is it comes with newer business capabilities which are needed for today, for retail today, to be able to, for an example, I will talk about stores. What we need today is an ability to provide real-time information to dashboards. An omni-channel click and collect. When people talk about curbside pickup, when people talk about click and collect, are we at a store from a tech perspective enabled to do that? One of the things that all of these bring is, for example, a heightened expectation of convenience. You can offer click and collect, but when a customer goes to collect, if you make him wait for 20 minutes, the purpose is lost. How do we bring that and ensure the collect happens in a 5 minutes with maybe a couple of clicks? So these are capabilities that we have brought in. For example, now we have an app which allows you to do omnichannel click and collect, and with a point of maybe a couple of clicks, the delivery to the customer is done. So these are capabilities that come in now with the S4 HANA backbone, and you bring that and look at it from a perspective of extensions which the partners bring in, which is our industry cloud solution. To continue the same example, we have a partner solution which allows the store associate, while he's doing the fulfillment, to also engage with the customer and possibly discuss with him if he's, let's say, buying fashion, are there accessories that can go with it, with the same product, and possibly try and do an upsell. Maybe if the customer had an experience or a complaint in the past, he can then engage with the customer and see if there are any issues or any option opening issues that he wants to resolve and close, or maybe there is a sweetener that he wants to give in. Fundamentally, this information to be able to be being available to the store associate when he's engaging with the customer is what our install technology aspects do. So what we are essentially trying to do is bring in newer practices and also put in as enhancements which will heighten and further the customer experience. So that's in a sense a view of what the industry cloud and the S4 HANA solutions which come together in RISE will deliver. A little bit of details on what RISE with SAP is all about. RISE with SAP, as I like to call it, is on your terms, on your timeline transformation. It starts with looking at what we call the business process intelligence. The first question that you need to ask is, do I need it? And is it relevant for me? What it was the first, and therefore that is the first question that we seek to answer. We have a scenario recommendations which tells you what are the areas that are current bottlenecks, what is the value that it is, and what are the innovations that come with it in the S4. So it establishes basis a specific usage. It is not the SAP outside view which talks about maybe a general benefit statement. This is actual diagnosis of your current landscape. And you run a particular node, and this gives you in your environment what does it mean for what does S4HANA mean? What does it mean? That's the first step, which gives you the business process intelligence. Having understood that, the next question is, are we cloud ready? And therefore, it comes, RISE with SAP comes with the S4HANA cloud. In the cloud, we have both a private cloud, if you add also a public cloud version. Then enables you, if you want an exclusive cloud-based environment for you, you would look at the private cloud. But there are options where you can be a tenant in the cloud environment, which is S4HANA public cloud. Most retailers today, obviously, my understanding, look at a private cloud instance, but from an offering perspective, that is available. The cloud can then work on the infrastructure of your choice. If you have existing relationships, you could work with them, or we can then help you and bring any of the three main hyperscalers into the environment. And all of this is managed from an application perspective by SAP. What this essentially means is a lot of your current patch upgrades, environment upgrades, all of that comes from SAP. And fundamentally, because it's being run by SAP with the support of the development organizations, a direct impact is the amount of downtimes and the amount of disruptions that happen just to keep the system running. That itself gets taken care of. The next question that when you look is that seeks to be answered is, what happens to all my custom code? Over the years, I've done so much. There are enhancements that are relevant and near and dear to me, which my business wanted. What happens to that? We have a utility which allows you to look at your custom code, determine its readiness and compatibility with S4. All of that will tell you what will work and what are the changes that need to be done. Therefore, the custom code in that sense gets taken care of. And you have to look at custom code from an aspect of custom codes because the business wanted it. There could also be elements of custom code because SAP didn't have it. So what SAP didn't have would most probably, in all likelihood, be covered in the business process, in the business enhancements that have come in from S4. And what the business wanted, a large element of it would, if were written properly in the historical periods, if we were using the right user exits, all of that would be covered. The question, therefore, then was the next question that you seek to answer is change management. Can people understand how do we bring in and how do we help people come up to speed? So for that, there is a component of what we call the SAP Learning Hub, which is an optional component, but that can be bundled in with the RISE. Therefore, that takes care of upskilling or change management requirements in both the IT team and the business team. The RISE with technology also comes with credits for the business technology. So there is an ability to do the extensions we spoke about, your own extensions if there are components that you want to maybe develop. So the AI for a product should somehow cut my imagination, but that's a very good example of how you can bring that and use the business technology credits to build that on and bring that back into the ERPs, because then if the products happen, the related master data, all of that can then be synced back and created in the ERP. And then the final aspect is it comes from a business network perspective, a set of add-ons. So which is a cloud-based track and trace solution which tells you where my products are, let's say in transit from the warehouse to the store or from the supplier to your warehouse, called the logistics business network. And then there is the bundling of the Ariba network, which is allows you to find and discover new suppliers. So this is the entire packaging around the Rise with SAP. Fundamentally, what it has done is address a lot of questions that retailers wanted and had with respect to the cloud offering, a lot of questions that they had with respect to a move to S/4HANA, and also brought with it a lot of value adds that are relevant in today's times and then can work together. Now, while this was one aspect of it, what we want, in addition to this, what has also been done is to look at a possible industry bundle. So for retail, while one of the recommendations and bundles that we have gotten is what we call the basic rise for SAP. There is a bundling from a cross-channel promotion and pricing. So which is an industry cloud partner solution, industry cloud SAP solution, which allows you to publish from a point in time both the online and store prices and online with variants. So if you want to sell a separate price in Amazon or Flipkart and a Paytm mall and in your stores, all of that using one single pricing backbone, which is cross-channel pricing and promotion, which is the omni-channel pricing promotion. And then from an industry cloud perspective, there is an option of looking at a point of sale, which is the partner solution of Unity. All of it working on the S/4HANA cloud. So this is one of the bundle recommendations that has been made for retail specific. All of this is also available along with the RISE components I spoke about. So what does S/4HANA having the RISE private edition do? Fundamentally, end-to-end SLA. We're talking about close to 199.7% availability on the full application stack. And these are SLAs at an application level, not at the cloud infra level, which is a big plus. The entire landscape run by SAP. SAP runs SAP. The biggest benefit is it's one contract, it's one SLA across, therefore it's a complete unified support. And more importantly, because it is run SAP, we bring in the reference architecture, and all of that and all of this works on the recommended SAP reference architecture, which is in line with what has been recommended by the SAP Global Industry Unit Worldwide. Therefore, you are in compliance with the SAP roadmap and the reference architecture. It is innovation ready, of course, in terms of we spoke about how we brought in the ML and AI into the ERP stack itself, and with the business technology platform allows you to do all the innovations. And from an application perspective, what this ensures is that the patching and the updates are taken care by SAP. Therefore, your landscape is always on the latest patch available, and therefore your ERP is always updated. There is no question of we had an older version, we are on that EHP, and we have to do a few things for us to get innovation. All of that gets taken care of. All of it is run, regulated by SAP, and therefore you are available at that. And of course, it is cloud-based, but then we've taken from a security infra perspective, we are there if it's an SAP data center or with all the leading hyperscalers. Uh, and the other aspect of it, and the final aspect of it, is essentially a very controlled TCO. What it means is everything. It brings complete transparency from an end-to-end TCO perspective, from a network, from an application, from an infra perspective. It gives you clear visibility on the entire piece. So therefore, in summary, you have the best cloud infra that is available. You have the ERP, which is modern, digital, and ready to take off. It comes with the process intelligence, which tells you from a perspective of uh, identifying process from a benchmark perspective, identifying process from a bottleneck perspective, and therefore from a infra perspective, from a tech perspective, what we are essentially trying to say is that all of the ERP or the technology backbone that the business demands for in today's times, in that sense, has been taken care of. And this being a continuous improvement process, there will be elements that keep coming in at various points in time. Therefore, in that sense, it enables you to, be at peace that when business grows, the tech will be there to support it, and you can then be rest assured that being a cloud-based environment, you can ramp up, you can move, and you have the capabilities as required in various times. And the landscape has always been is there and agile and modern. Uh, these are, of course, some outside views, but just to give you a view of how we have seen global customers gain benefits with RISE with SAP and the S/4HANA public cloud. Fundamentally, what it means is they have seen benefits both in sales, they have seen benefits in terms of uh, bringing in benefits in merchandising processes, because what this enables them to do is, in a sense, bring customer feedback back into the merchandising processes. So you know what sells, you have an ability to understand what is selling and quickly make course corrections at that point in time. Therefore, there is that sense. And there are, people have seen benefits from a environment sustainability perspective. Uh, some examples. These are, of course, global customers, but even in India, we have customers who are where the implementations are in progress. So I'm still not at liberty to put them on a completed slide, but we have fundamentally, we have seen great traction, and there has been a very good response in terms of how people have reacted to RISE with SAP. And the last aspect is in terms of how do we see this work, and question of how do we operationalize all this. It starts with what we call uh, the BSR report, which is essentially trying to see and understand where is your current landscape. It's in a sense a diagnostic of where we are, matched with where as a business you want to go, and what the business outlook is and where the management is looking at. And we look and bring that together with how we then work with you and get into discovery workshops. Talk about which and how have things changed. What a discovery workshop does essentially is to be able to understand A, the aspirations, B, the requirements, and 3, in terms of what they see as the art of possible. How do we bring that back? Having brought that, then we get into the works of what should be target and state architecture, because bringing it from an enterprise grade scalable architecture, how does this work from a roadmap perspective? Would there be phases, phase 1, phase 2, and then because it is in the RISE for SAP framework, SAP stays in the game throughout. We then look at it from a transitioning to a delivery perspective, and bring that in from an end-to-end perspective, from both from an infra, from a delivery and from a project management perspective. That's a view of how the engagements typically happen. So, and I hope I have been able to give you a view of what SAP is doing from a perspective of accelerating and bringing digital transformation, and a view of what the Rise with SAP framework is all about. Happy to take up any questions, but from a content perspective, this is what I had to present today.
Thanks, Madhav. Thanks for taking us through the content. I saw Mr. Ravi Kumar had raised his hand, so I didn't see any question on the chat. So if I can ask you to probably put your question on the chat, we can take that up. Meanwhile, I have a question for both Madhav, you, as well as for Ranjan. So in the CPG event that we had a couple of days back, one of the themes in terms of trends that came up, and this is something that I've been seeing in the market as well, which is retailers creating their own in-house brands and growing those brands. Is that something that you see across all retailers, or is that in certain segments that you see? And so that's something that I wanted to ask before we can actually open it up for anybody else to ask any questions.
Madhav, do you want me to take that question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I think this is nothing new. So because margins in fashion or brand business, especially whichever, whether it is CPG or whether it is fashion, whatever it is, margins have always been a difficult area because and they have been shrinking over a period of time. And what is becoming more important is you can't have too many players sharing the margins within that same buck, within that same product that you are selling. And that's where a lot of private label has been, it's not something new. It's been there for ages now. I think for the last 2 decades, it's been there, where in different shapes and forms, different retailers have started creating private labels more to have a control over the product, and also to have a better margin to be able to survive or sustain the retail landscape.
Okay. Thanks, Ranjan. I'm also going to launch a poll from a feedback perspective. This is going to be the first of the 2 polls that we have for today. I would request if you can answer those polls as well. Sorry, Madhav, go on.
Just to add on to what Ranjan said, part of the S4 transformation, what we've also done is bring in the ability to do a private label back to the ERP. Because what a lot of the product manufacturing from a retail perspective, fashion manufacturing, all of that is now part and embedded back into the core ERP itself. So and that's one of the things that we've brought in from an industry to the core, as we call it in SAP. That's a functionality and available that is now available and can be used. So private label in that sense becomes that much more easier from a tech perspective.
Okay, cool. So another question that I have is around keeping the shelves stocked enough, right? So there is in retail, there is always this concept of stock always being available when the customers need it, right? So stockouts are pretty common, and stockouts are also very expensive from that point of view. So how can SAP, Madhav, maybe this is for you, how can SAP actually help retailers to ensure that the stockout situation is minimal from that point of view? Madhav, you're on mute.
So yes, so multiple ways to look at this. First, primarily from an sense and respond perspective, a lot of the concept of bringing and managing stock at the store. One of the reasons why this happens is because there's a stock lying here. There are invisible pockets in the store where there is stock and you don't know it. Or there is no visibility, or it's lying in some other stores. What we have done, A, is to bring that visibility in. So you know exactly where stock is, or the store knows where, if stock is not available in the store, where can they get it from? And we therefore bringing an ability to A, show that. So once they know where it is, they know what to do and prevent stockouts. So a store knows today that if I don't have stock, it's there in a store, can I make a request and make it back here? So that's one aspect. For view of inventory from a real-time perspective, view of inventory across locations, view of inventory across. So that's one aspect of it, which is visibility. The other aspect of dimensions of stockouts is, stock not being available, or it's maybe reserved for some other orders. So that's the other aspect of it. From a point of order fail rate, the moment there is an order, you can reserve stock and ensure that the order is fulfilled, therefore there is no stock out. So one of the biggest worries that retailers have is, I pick an order, how if I can't fulfill it, if it's stocked out at the store, what happens? That's the other aspect of it. So we have now with platforms and capabilities that allow you to block stock and reserve stock for both soft and hard. The third aspect is slightly long answer, but just thought I give you the complete perspective. The third aspect is with with the digital backbone that S4 has, what it allows you to do is set parameters and alerts for minimum stock levels at the store and at stocking locations, and therefore basis that you get alerts of possible stock outs or excess stocks in real time. Therefore, you know how to move stock, and therefore the merchandiser knows how when to do his drops, when to do his stock drops at each of his stores. It's a real time more a fashion perspective, but then that's an ability that they have, which then gives them alerts in terms of possible stock outs or in terms of a spike in sale which needs to be replenished out of the order. All of those are alerts which are available in the dashboards in S4HANA, because with embedded analytics, as it's called, it gives you a view of in real time, and while you're doing replenishment or while you're doing movements, it gives you that alert.
Cool. Thank you so much, Madhav. I think there is a question from Ashok on the chat saying, can you provide examples of implementation in FMCG or CPG companies in India or US?
Implementation
For S4. Yeah. I'm assuming it's for S4. Ashok, please let us know if it is not, if you're asking for something else.
Yeah, it is for S4 only, for, including the app, including the app functionality, which is mentioned just now.
Oh, yes. So, FMCG, CPG, we have lots of examples. In fact, CPG has been a very good success from perspective, both in India and abroad. So, globally, I think I'll start with the big ones. Hindustan, Unilever, globally, P&G, they're all on their path, and they're doing a lot of work in terms of move. In India, Dabur is live on S4. There are Usha International, we have Asian Paints, which is, Asian Paints is one of our forerunners from a S4 perspective. Britannia is one of the other examples. I'm talking CPG because the question was for CPG, but these are all customers who are looking at, have done a lot of work on the S4 space.
So the companies, most of the CPG companies or FMCG companies have their depletion system, DMS system with the distributors.
That's right.
And they have developed it extensively, invested extensively. How does it, that gets integrated? One with your SAP core system and with the S4 and analytics, etc.
So, yes, so working with DMSs, I think one of the industry cloud solutions that we have on is a solution called Newspage, which is an industry cloud solution which is also available from a DMS distributor perspective. That's developed by Accenture. So that's an endorsed and available solution which we can buy. But from a more generic perspective, the S4HANA or an ERP, for instance, we have an ability to work with a lot of DMS solutions, so Botry, and a lot of the solutions today they have been proven instances of it. But from a SAP perspective, the Botry Newspace solution the Newspace extension solution is already available and it's endorsed and works with SAP as well.
Okay, but then Accenture mostly is Unilever, for example, they work with Botry. You mentioned Unilever, they have Botry solution, not with Accenture solution.
Yes, that's right.
So have you integrated that one?
Yes, they have, of course. Botry has been integrated. That's not a problem.
Okay.
But the SAP endorsed solution has been but then that doesn't prevent us from integrating or working with all the other solutions. In fact, there have been smaller CRM solutions which smaller CPG customers have integrated with. Also,
you mentioned about Amazon Web Services.
Yes.
So a lot of things companies are hosting in Amazon Web Services. So can you talk a little bit more about that? What kind of embedded, you mentioned about embedded technology behind that. Is it just embedded technology, or is it, what is that kind of offering that you offer to companies through that?
In the context of
Sorry, your voice is not clear.
I spoke about AWS in the context of from a hyperscaler perspective, that is an option that you can look at an S4 private cloud working out of an AWS platform.
Okay.
Thanks, Ashok. Thanks, Madhav. Let's go to the next segment of the session, which is where I kind of take you through the Indus, about Indus and about the special interest group itself. Meanwhile, I've put on the chat a link to the Indus WhatsApp group that we have for retail as a community. Just let me know if you're able to see my screen, Madhav, if you can just confirm.
Yes, I can.
Okay, super. So I'll just take 5 minutes to kind of go through what Indus is and what we do as a user group for people if you have not already know about Indus. So Indus is an SAP user group, which means that it is an independent community. It has its own bylaws, it has its own leadership, and incorporated as an association of person. It is it's a user group for customers, by customers, and run by customers and made up of customers. It also, having an active user group is also an indication of maturity in terms of technology adoption in that particular country or in that particular market. So SAP adoption in terms of maturity of adoption in India is significantly high when compared to all the other countries in Asia Pacific. So that's probably one of the reasons why the user group in India is also pretty more active than all the other user groups put together in Asia Pacific. So, but why do we need a user group, right? So we are talking about CPG in a retail event. So that shows that there is a convergence of industry. So CPG companies are creating brands and opening up their own stores. Retail customers are actually, creating brands and becoming CPG customers. Chemical businesses are becoming retail businesses. Automotive businesses are becoming retail businesses. Product businesses turning into services. Services turning into products. So there is a whole lot of flux in the industry. So plus add to that technological advances, SAP itself in the last maybe 3 years, I know as a matter of fact has released at least either acquired or developed easily more than 80 different products. I remember seeing a slide of a CIO about the technologies that they track, and they had 98 technologies that at any point in time that they are tracking. Plus add to that emerging business models where product as a service, or for example, Ashok Leyland now, instead of selling trucks, they are also able to sell mileage on that a truck does. So that is a completely different business model. The way you engage with the customers, the way you invoice them, the way you raise capital, the way you run the entire business is completely changing. So what all of these three means is that you need a place where customers can come together and learn from each other. So for example, customers come together. If you're a CPG company and you're trying to learn, let's say, for example, how other industries do a particular or solve a particular challenge, it's a great idea to kind of talk to them in this setup so that you can learn from each other. So that's what user groups enable. As Indus, what are the objectives? So there are three. One is to enable collaboration amongst members. One of the reasons why we have a WhatsApp group is so that you can talk to each other outside of these events as well. So these events are a great opportunity for you to ask questions and kind of get answers from the speakers. But once you finish the event, you kind of move into the WhatsApp groups or the website and kind of continue to have these conversations. Co-innovate with SAP and SAP ecosystem, and influence SAP both from a product direction, from a strategy, from a go-to-market. I can tell you that Indus has regular conversations with the SAP management team in India, SAP management team in Asia Pacific, with the SAP global management team as well as part of Shugan. So what is the current status? I have the pleasure of working with Indus since there were 4 customers who came together to relaunch the Indus user group. It was originally launched in 96, if I remember correctly. So this is the 25th year after launch. But in all practical purposes, starting 2010 is when actually Indus became really active. We have grown from 4 customers to 1,800 customers. We have 9,000 plus individual members. I spoke about the fact that Indus board members work with the SAP global leadership team as well. They do it as part of the Shugan network, which is a network of user group representatives from 22 of the most mature user groups around the world. And Indus has been part of the group for the last 4 years or so. So how does Indus enable this collaboration, co-innovation, and influence? There are 3 ways: councils, chapters, and special interest groups. Councils are nothing but small teams coming together for a very specific purpose. 2 kinds of councils right now. One is the Indus board members who decide the strategy and who decide what we need to do as a group so that everyone can benefit. And then there is a licensing committee, because licensing was at one point in time a very, very important topic. Still continues to be, because of the disparate systems that customers have in their own landscapes. So licensing becomes an important topic. So we have 2 right now. So this is the set of Indus board members. You can see there are from various industries, from various sizes of businesses, and also different kinds of businesses and different industries represented here as well. So there are 2 more who have been added to this list. In fact, yesterday the announcement went off, so I have not updated the slides yet. One is Mr. Udayaraj Prabhu from Marico, and the second one is Sandeep Pradhan from Excite Industries. So they are the 2 board members who kind of gotten added to this list of Indus board members. So we spoke about special interest groups, right? So there are industry-based special interest groups, function-based, and product-based. So we are talking about retail as a industry special interest group. We've had the retail special interest group for some time now, but I think after COVID kind of broke out last year, the activity in the retail in terms of physical or virtual meetings kind of went down. We are trying to re-establish all of that and put in a cadence in terms of how often we want to meet and what topics we want to drive as part of the retail special interest group. The WhatsApp group is pretty active. At least I try to post content related to retail on the WhatsApp group. I've been fortunate for people to kind of respond to those as well. But for some of the other WhatsApp groups, for example, as for HANA, ALM, globalization, they're all pretty human HR, procurement, they're pretty active from that point of view. Digital transformation is also pretty active from that point of view. This is so that we can continue to have these conversations. You can share with us what are some of the challenges that you're facing, how others have addressed the challenges, or if you have done something interesting, you can share about that in these user group meetings. As I said, the retail special interest group is very, very specific for retail specific customers. And we are more than happy to kind of invite customers to talk about success stories. We've had customer CIOs from, if I remember correctly, from the US. I'm forgetting the name of the customer now. Madhav, please help me remember the name of the customer who presented their S4 journey as well last.
Tapestry.
Sorry?
Tapestry.
Yeah, Tapestry. So Tapestry, the CIO of Tapestry actually presented how they have kind of gone on the journey of S4. We would like to have more and more such conversations as well. There was a question around examples of customers who've gone live with S4. So that's exactly what we can cover as part of the special interest group as well. Last is chapters. So we have, once the COVID situation improves, we'll again go back to face-to-face meetings in these cities. So I will stop there. So this is you can scan this and join the retail WhatsApp group. Please, the only request is that let's keep the sanctity of the group. Let's not post good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or forwards, political forwards or religious forwards. Let's just keep this group for retail specific conversation, so that the sanctity of the group is kind of maintained. So with that, I will kind of stop sharing and open up if anyone has any questions about Indus or the user group itself, and open up the second poll that I have for the content that you heard both from Ranjan and Madhav, and the conversations that you had. Any questions, comments, feedbacks around that? While we wait for questions, anyone putting up your hands, I have one last question from my end for both Madhav as well as Ranjan. Ranjan, you spoke about digital twin. Can you just share a little bit of example around where do you see the use of digital twin in retail, and how does that help either one of you, Madhav or Ranjan?
Yeah, so from my perspective, digital twin is more needed in terms of the supply chain, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because the value chains is pretty long, and you start with many things maybe 6 to 8 months ahead of time, and if you need visibility across, so let me give you an example for fashion itself. So now, because that's what I'm representing, so maybe I'll talk about fashion. So when does a cycle for a fashion manufacturing starts? When you start growing cotton maybe 9 to 10 months ahead. Where is the cotton grown? What quality of cotton is needed for what kind of thing? Where is the thread that is created? Where is the fabric being made? And then keep adding the different steps of it. Where is the trim being made? And then where is it getting manufactured now? In what stage? And at what stage, where do you stand in terms of the overall cycle of the manufacturing? In your entire procurement cycle, and each of these are done by different people and different organizations, could be different parts of the globe. If you have visibility, so imagine today if you realize that a fabric has been already made and there was an order for, I just gave that example as well, and you realize that the whole of your spring summer you no more going to have sales for it. How do you convert that fabric into something which could be used in autumn winter as well if you have that visibility? Otherwise, you will end up creating that product which might not be useful, or you might be just holding that merchandise or that product for another 6 to 8 months to sell it in the next year, which could be out of fashion, which could be out of trend. You might end up incurring a lot of cost in terms of storing that, managing that, and then still might not be able to get the right value for it. So I think that's where the digital twin becomes much more important from my perspective.
Cool,
Though use
thanks.
cases have not been too much at the moment, but I think use cases are going to evolve over a period of time. People will start getting a lot of these use cases up and running.
Super, thanks, Ranjan. Madhav, you want to share something about that?
Uh, I think Ranjan's covered it fairly well. It is a new concept, yes. What this is one of the newer conversations we're having in this field. But what it brings to the fore is an ability to, like in supply chain, look at aspects of profitability. Now, one of the questions that, one of the use cases that people can talk about is when COVID happened, people did innovations at crazy speed. Now, how does that, with things settling down, is it profitable anymore? Was it the right way to do it? Now, these are all aspects that can be looked at from a what if or an ability perspective. So digital twin as a concept is something that can work in those scenarios as well.
Cool. Thank you so much. Any further questions? If there are no further questions, then I would like to thank everyone for your time and your attention. I know we've had a lot of these meetings. I do hope that you join the WhatsApp group and continue to have the conversation with us there. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for your time and attention, and take care, stay safe. Thanks, Madhav. Thanks, Ranjan, for sharing your insights as well.
Thank you everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.